This is all the stuff I gotta carry. The years of abuse that I've had to endure here in Tillamook. And I keep being sent to drug addicts for help. I've got recordings with so-called professionals like Nicole Vertner pawning me off on Brian Wilgus again and again. Brian's trying. He's at least keeping his word as far as what he's supposed to be doing. Yesterday I did record it, and he knows I record. And I didn't give him a stern chastising. What I did was I sat down with him and tried to use it as a learning tool and an educational experience. A lot of the things that homeless people are told is absolutely not true. Like, you can't make a report for somebody else. Actually, you can make a witness statement, and anybody is allowed to make a witness statement. Anybody. When they deny you the right to make a witness statement, well, that gets into some pretty hairy territory. Those cops can literally go to prison for that. Now, I've tried again and again to report the abuse. I'm told that it's my fault for speaking up. No, it's absolutely not. Speaking up about abuse is the right thing to do. A lot of people weren't intentionally trying to be abusive when they wanted to push their opinions and their ideas on me. Well, their ideas and opinions are based on what? Is it based on looking at evidence? Is it based on actually getting to know the person and their situation? When somebody tells you over and over again, I need a place where I can take this stuff out of my car so that I can figure out what's going on in the gas tank and pull out the fuel pump. But that's not how the people who wanted to help me interpreted it. And I was overwhelmed with the amount of time that was being spent on all these special projects. Oh, Sean, I'll do this and it'll make everything better. And I'll do that and it'll make everything better. Like, we pushed my fucking car from one location to another, to another, to another. Having to push it because it was broken, and it was broken very specifically because of people breaking it. But you think that beating the hell out of a vehicle, it's not going to have any issues? Plus, the thing is old. We're on the Oregon coast. You know, I'm having to do a lot of work on this thing to keep it going, especially with people adding more expenses to me. And then, of course, if somebody does something to me that I didn't catch the actual person who did it right when they were doing it, I have to literally pretend that it did not happen, or I get treated like it's a delusion. When Andrew Wolnez and his friends started adapting their tactics so that it's a minute or less, how long does it take me to start recording? Now, the other day, why was I able to record? Somebody else pointed them out to me. Here's the thing. I look at the ground when I'm walking. Usually down and to the right because my fucking neck hurts. It sucks. Like, I've had people get out of their vehicles angry and wonder why it is that I'm looking in their vehicle, and I'm thinking to myself, I was walking by and looking at the ground, and then your vehicle was in front of me. You know? Like, I'll show you. let's say this thing right here, my recording device. Let's say this is a vehicle, and the bottom of the screen is the sidewalk, and the vehicle's there, and I'm walking on the street, oftentimes because it's just become habit. But I'm looking at the ground, and I'm looking to the right, and if I see a nail or anything that's going to go into a tire, I pick it up. But walking by somebody's vehicle as you're doing that, it's only, 5 paces at most. For most people, it might be more for me. But I'm not looking inside of their vehicle. I'm looking at the quarter panels. It's usually people in big trucks that get up and angry for some odd reason. I don't know what it is about big trucks and attitudes. That doesn't mean every person with a big truck has an attitude. It's just, or a big SUV. That doesn't happen often, though. Most people notice that somebody's walking by, they look up at you. That's something about motion. Our eyes are drawn to motion. Now, when somebody who's threatened us and assaulted us and accused us of committing crimes we didn't commit is repeatedly coming up and assaulting us, that doesn't feel good. Right? I'm supposed to tell you how it feels. Well, it doesn't feel good. It doesn't feel good to be beat up for shit you didn't do. It doesn't feel good to be stalked by somebody and their friends. It doesn't feel good to be sent by the professionals to quote unquote peer support workers who are also themselves drug addicts. And meanwhile, here I am, obviously still alive. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's pleasant. That doesn't necessarily mean that I want to be here. However, the situation is that I do everything that I can to try to get heard. There's certain things I'm not willing to do, but Andrew Wolnez is willing to do those things. Chris Stafford is willing to do those things. And they're not the only ones. Clint Snell is willing to do those things by his own admission. I wonder how many witnesses there were to that. There's a recording, several recordings with Carl Snell, his brother, talking a little bit about the situation. Now, people on the streets, a lot of them get into drugs. A lot of them are on drugs before they ever hit the street. How many of y'all parents have kicked your kids out because they were on drugs? Because they couldn't stop. God, that ain't no fun. I got a lot of stuff written by a lot of witnesses to the situation. Attorney Chacon, Bailey Lewis. There's also this is a fun one. Over and over again, I'm treated like I never went in to try to turn this stuff in. I've got recordings, and I've saved the papers themselves. Now, this right here is Luke McCabe, 8/29/25. Over stuff that I was trying to turn in 2022, 2023, 2024, 2025, and now 2026. It's not that the crimes have stopped. Andrew Wolnez wasn't the first person to do this in the third-party contact, such as all of them youngins. Yeah, that is third-party contact. He wanted to specifically use them youngins as his excuse to harm me, yet I've done nothing harmful to those children. Children, he calls them. He's one of them people that I was thinking was a youngin', okay? He's, as Brian Wilgus was saying, much older than that. That's not my choice. You know, I live with people out on the streets. People out on the streets generally age faster. You know, I'm only 45, but I look older. Anyway, Brian Wilgus is supposed to hopefully come over, and I don't know about the commissioners meeting because I haven't heard back from Mike. Also, I haven't been able to go through the stuff I need to get to him. I've got the little USB drives to get to him, um, but I haven't been able to go through the stuff. Well, I have been going through, but I'm working on a lot of different stuff at the same time. If somebody's supposed to be coming over to help me, I have to. That doesn't happen often. I have to stop and hope that they're actually going to help how I need. Brian at least read the instructions, but I'm gonna, of course, read them again. I'm also gonna dig out my the very first protection order, the temporary one, and it has the exact same instructions as the permanent one. Also showing how far back I've had to try to turn this stuff in. The police didn't start treating me like I was a delusional idiot over them youngins. The first people to mess with me were a woman named Molly, and of course, that guy who stalked me here. See that? That's my name. See that? That's the date. Those are the instructions that I had. One of the issues with that is that how am I supposed to be able to do that while I'm having to deal with people continually doing more of this crap to me? While I'm continuing to have to find evidence on the internet, on YouTube, on Facebook, while I'm having to deal with police officers and the public trying to do everything in their power to cut me off from my disability money, to cut me off from actual help, to cut me off from having access to the evidence. But the evidence on my YouTube shows that I've been trying to turn them in. I'm not trying to shoot people. I'm not trying to stab people. This stuff is ludicrous. You know, getting out of the hospital and having to go back in the very same day with a head injury on 5/14/2024, that kind of sucked. You tell me to go to the police, but the police are going to send me to TFCC or tell me to go to the library. Or the moment that you start trying to tell on a police officer, you have to deal with them playing stupid. This is from Lori Craig about the situation with Andrew Wolnez immediately violating the protection order as soon as he was given the protection order. There's also the stuff with Mona, handwritten, and Caitlin Thompson, handwritten. You know, you guys say that there's the criminal code, or the, what do you want to call it? What did Lawson call it in specific? The convict code. You never call the police. Well, I've seen Mawson call the police. I've heard Mawson call the police. I've heard Mawson call the police on his victims. Most of the time, the cops show up, like, of course, with Lisa Simmons. Mawson was extremely cruel to her. Felt that she had owed him some of her feminine parts because he bought her a bike that she did not ask for. And then he wanted to insist that since she wasn't giving it up because, you know, he was pissed off that she's with somebody. She's been with this guy. And that's not everybody's business. But the situation is, Mossam wasn't the victim. Lisa Simmons was. Now, Lisa Parker, she's one of the people that was messing with me over Andrew Wolnez. And although Andrew Wolnez broke my phone on multiple occasions, it still worked. Barely. But Lisa Parker was able to break it over at Mossam's because she heard a rumor that I was a pedophile. So that made it okay for her to break my things and then play stupid. And that's where Mossam started his angry week-long rant about how I need to go, find my paperwork that shows that I'm not a pedophile. So, of course, I go digging through all of it, and I show him my paperwork, and I'm like, see, dude, there's not a single fucking arrest for anything even closely resembling murder or any crime of a sexual nature whatsoever. And there's absolutely no crimes whatsoever towards children. A lot of the people that I had to tell on are parents. That's the simple truth of it. They're the parents of the victims. In many of these cases, the reason that I found out is because the parents themselves told on themselves. Like Amy and Andrew Witcher. While they were supposedly going to help me, it didn't end up being help. Now, there's a lot of victims that are afraid to come forward because of embarrassment and ridicule. And you get to see very clearly how prevalent that is, especially if it's a male victim. I'm not saying that female victims don't have to go through that. And one of the most horrible things that I've had to do is say the victims' names as well. If you're going to tell me these things are happening and you are afraid for your life, you're telling me very specifically that Ted Bollinger has access to you. Yeah, I'm going to take that seriously. But if you're not going to help to turn it in, well, it's awful difficult to believe you. When you promise to help me to turn this stuff in, to look at it, so that you know the truth. I don't need somebody who's going to go in and say, I believe him. No, these people have made a profession out of making sure that homeless people are treated as inhumanely as possible. Homeless people are primary population of most jails and prisons. And most halfway houses, and so on, and so on, and so on. Most of the halfway houses in the United States are very specifically set up that they're there to help people who are felons. Unfortunately, what that results in is people who lost their houses or lost their homes due to abuse not getting help, while a pedophile's getting quite a bit. That's not okay. Now, with Andrew Wolnez, he wanted to pretend that I was a pedophile, wanted to pretend that I murdered Natalie Bollinger, wanted to literally lie about multiple situations. When I had to get a protection order against him, he pretended like he needed one against me or was getting one against me, which is absolutely not the case. If the police had actually done their jobs through any of this, if they could be actually trusted to do their jobs, Andrew Wolnez would be in fucking prison. There's a big difference between what he's doing and what I'm having to do. the situations of people putting rocks through my window. That was Timothy Sadler there for that situation. It wasn't the only one because it wasn't the only time it happened. And of course, breaking my door so that it no longer closes. You get to see that I'm having to live out of my car. Look at all that stuff hanging out. I mean, I'm having to carry evidence or find a way to move my evidence from one end of the country so that I can find a safe place to go through it all. And every place that I go, I have to go through this same thing because of the popularity of people who are known for not telling the truth, have a very specific history of not telling the truth. Now, obviously, my paperwork says that I am not schizophrenic or delusional. Andrew Wolnez keeps interrupting people, like, for example, pulling over Andrew Wolnez pulling over Brian Wilgus to tell Brian Wilgus that Sean's waiting for you on YouTube, and telling Brian Wilgus that I'm schizophrenic and delusional. The fact that Brian Wilgus said that himself on this channel and is definitely recorded on this is important. That's a third-party violation. There's also a big difference between somebody not being allowed in court. For example, if they have no idea that there is a court date. When you're having to go to Jeff Ritter, the Colorado Coalition of the Homeless, and Kara Heller about abuse because the cops don't give a shit. That's two of the people I had to go to for help before Natalie was killed. I went to the professionals. They just wanted to make a profit by having me go back week after week after week. You ever thought about housing? Oh my God, I had housing in Nebraska for a whole year. What sucked is that while I was in Nebraska trying to get help because I was being stalked by people, not just online, I couldn't go to Boulder without having to deal with, well, about half the time that I went to Boulder, I was assaulted before I ran into anybody that I knew. I'm like, holy shit. I mean, I knew that Boulder was bad with tweakers, but it got really bad. A whole bunch of young tweakers with technology at their fingertips and too many hormones. They hear a rumor, they jump to conclusions, and it's all right. And that's so difficult to get through, is people's assumptions. And of course, the police and Bollingers played on that. The assumption that all homeless people are quote unquote mentally ill and on drugs. They played on the multitude of their followers that would type things in the comments like, he looks like a pedophile, he looks like a rapist, just like Natalie's friends were saying to her and typing to her over and over and over again. And she had to correct them. She had to let them know that we never dated. Natalie herself said that we never dated. But these web sleuth nut jobs were allowed to, for example, Kara Johnson Miles was allowed to claim that Natalie and I dated. Now, thank goodness it's in court documents that I still have access to. So I can still show that Natalie Bollinger very clearly stated that we never dated. I can also prove that these web sleuth nut jobs that were working with the Bollingers, like Kara Johnson Miles, Carl Rogers, and many others, these people lied over and over again. Oh, there's also Aaron Cockerham. They intentionally misrepresented the situation. At least they let me know that they were contacting me for the Bollingers. or for other interested parties that ended up being complete BS. These people literally manufactured entire fake families. Aaron Cockerham was supposedly this Missy Layla Johnson's sister. Later on, she wanted to try to, when Layla Johnson got busted, then all of a sudden it's, oh no, I was just forwarding that from somebody who's pretending to be her sister. This is the kind of help that I'm getting because not one of my actual so-called friends in real life gave a crap. That's because you don't see the difference between a disabled person and a fucking crackhead. You don't care the difference between a disabled person and a crackhead. You have somebody you can take your bad day out on, and that's good enough. This one right here, it says Guardian ad litem. Sean Schwartz, petitioner, versus Andrew Wolnez, respondent. This is on 1/23/24. This is months after I first started trying to get a protection order against Andrew Wolnez. This is months after I first started trying to get help from these witnesses turning it in, but many of them are on the streets. There's also things you don't do. Like, I don't care about them doing drugs. That's not my business. You want to do that stuff in the privacy of your own household and not harm anybody. That's not my business. Okay, that's how I look at it. It's not my business. But when it is pouring out onto the street, like it is at Greg's over there, and it is pouring out onto the street every night, and I'm getting to hear these addicts talking about what a nice guy Greg is and how Greg's not like that. And I've got videos with Greg. I have videos with Greg of him not being a very nice guy live on my YouTube channel. There are videos of Greg very specifically because with that other Candace, the one that Amber at the McDonald's and many other people in town had warned me about, that turned into a situation of vandalism. You know, she wanted my help. She wanted it for free. She also wanted that help for Greg. It was supposedly for her kid. Her kid was hungry. Her kid. We all hear this stuff. Or it becomes the I'm sick. The most honest ones, the ones that I'm most likely to believe, are the ones that tell me that they had court. Yeah, that's actually pretty believable. Now, this thing is signed by Jonathan R. Hill, Circuit Court Judge. It says a temporary stalking protective order has been issued against Andrew Wolnez and is currently in effect. Both parties are ordered to appear in person in this court at the date and time below to explain whether the temporary order should be made permanent. Respondent, if you do not appear at the hearing, a permanent stalking protective order may be entered against you. So if he doesn't show up, it's going to be entered and it is permanent. It says petitioner, if you do not appear at the hearing, the court may dismiss your case and terminate or end your temporary stalking protective order, because like I said, I already had the temporary stalking order at that time. And this is dated 1/23/24. Time 1 p.m. Location courtroom 224. Additional information. Now the thing is that it wasn't Judge Hill. He signed some of the original stuff, but the final crap was Judge Trevino. It's also got Jana Proc's name on it and Sheriff Joshua Brown. So they're aware of this stuff. They were absolutely aware of it. But what has anybody done to stop him? Well, you get to see a lot of people, even on the streets, have tried to do something to stop him. They've tried to do it the right way to the best of their abilities and to their measure of safety. This is the thing that you're not looking at when I say to safely turn it in. Each and every one of these homeless people has tried to turn something in and had to do so by themselves. So they've been told all the same things that a police officer says to all the other homeless people, unless you're young and pretty, in which case they might help you out, which is, well, kind of like that cop in Nebraska State Patrol Troop E. Yeah, that guy turned out to be a groomer, and he was messing around with a very underage girl. Now, the situation with Andrew Wolnez continuing to run around and tell people that I'm schizophrenic and delusional, the same thing that Scott DaCosta, the sheriff of Chapel, Nebraska, did when I had to try to turn him in. Timothy Sadler and David Martinez and Lynn Lothman have, on multiple occasions, utilized the other law enforcement agencies in Tillamook to intimidate me. When I had to turn those three in, it wasn't just those three, it was also many of their coworkers, including Nick Troxel, because every time I tried to turn them in, I got talked in circles. Oh, we can't investigate ourselves. You have to call the Nebraska State or the Oregon State Police. Same thing I had to deal with in Nebraska. So they send me back and forth. State police tell me to call the department that I was trying to turn in. The department I was trying to turn in tells me I have to go to the state police. So back and forth and back and forth. And then I get arrested for improper use of 911 or obstructing government operations or things like that. And then after they've arrested you or they've decided that they can twist you being bullied into killing yourself as you're suicidal, they can take away your evidence. They can take away your electronic evidence, your electronic devices, everything that shows that you're telling the truth. And just tell everybody that you're schizophrenic and delusional and you made it up. Scott DaCosta went around Chapel, Nebraska telling people I was schizophrenic and delusional. Just like the cops in Colorado at the Longmont Hospital lied and told the hospital staff that I was schizophrenic. For the Bollinger family, and the court paperwork shows that. Not just the Bollinger family. Like I said, even though my friends and family wouldn't lift a goddamn finger to turn this in right when it happened, I guarantee you my predators are hanging on every word looking for any excuse. Kara Johnson Miles. I was trying to turn in Kara Johnson Miles for the stuff that her and the Bollingers were playing. Specifically, two of Natalie Bollinger's ex-stepmothers, Danica Garner and Rochelle Shelley Campbell. There was also the people that worked together with Rose M. Kelly. These are all supposed Christians. Okay, I want you to keep that in mind. I don't know about Andrew Wolnez. I never asked him. I don't care. But in each of these situations, after I had to try to turn in a stalking protective order, I had to turn in protection orders to Scott DaCosta, the sheriff of Chapel, Nebraska. I had to turn them in to himself, including the protection order that was written up against Ted Bollinger. I had to take 3 of them in there, and I had multiples for others, and it was just, I still have more blanks for more of them that I hadn't filled out yet when I was arrested. There was just too much. When I tried to turn in Scott DaCosta, yeah, he ran around telling everybody I was schizophrenic and delusional. It's gaslighting. It's the same thing that Natalie Bollinger was trying to pretend. And then I pop up a whole bunch of evidence, and people are like, "Oh my God, what the fuck?" Well, that's great. People realize I'm telling the truth, and they wanted to help me. But then these people who are working with the Bollingers, like Carl Rogers, for example, who had a site that was supposedly supposed to help me. And then there's Candace Bondurant, and Candace Bondurant made the other site. These are the two GoFundMes that were made for me. When people were threatening Candace and posting up her stuff in these Natalie Bollinger nut job groups, they were Sean Schwartz hate groups, but not Natalie Bollinger support groups. And when the police, the very specifically Deputy Michael Beard of Haxton, Colorado, in January of 2018, right after Natalie was killed, when, well, it seemed to me Shelley had tried to stage an incident to get me to call the cops. Now I'm saying that after the fact, because looking back on it, it's the way that Michael Beard reacted, the fact that they intimidated Candace while she was taking her kids to school. They harassed her at the hospital where she worked. When I was angry about the fact that she never came forward about any of that, she never tried to help turn it in. She treated me horribly. She intentionally misrepresented the situation. Wanted to throw it in my face that she gave me a bunch of help that she didn't, or that wasn't helpful. Was in the wrong direction, or was due to her assumptions. She threw things in my face that she had done for others I didn't ask her to do. Wanted to say, your friends. Your friends. I didn't ask you to spend a whole bunch of money that could have gone to feeding your kids or something more useful. I didn't ask you to give that money to a bunch of people that I knew to be drug addicts on the streets. I didn't ask her to do that. She went up to the counter to get some food at the McDonald's in Boulder and came back with $50 gift cards to give to a bunch of homeless drug addicts. So I've got a whole bunch of evidence of, well, literally at this point, literally hundreds of people have messaged me, called me, gotten a hold of me on Facebook and many other platforms, or at least attempted to on other platforms. I've apparently got messages waiting for me on platforms I don't have. So with the Andrew Wolnez thing and the cops doing everything that they can to prevent me from going to court, falsely arresting me so that I couldn't go to court. Now, this isn't over the stalking protective order. No, I absolutely have the stalking protective order. But as far as his many, many, many violations of the protective order, the police, the DA are still going out of their way to pretend that it doesn't exist. Things that you guys have gotten to see every single day. And you guys also get to hear. Even though Leslie Snell and her husband, obviously married, her husband was implicated in the death threats against me in Chapel, Nebraska. And I spoke up about that situation. Well, Scott DaCosta hired Leslie Snell to work for him as a secretary. When they got their quote-unquote protection order, or what was it called there? It wasn't actually a protection order. But they had to prevent me from being able to go to court. They had to prevent me from being able to go to court. Now, when you falsely arrest somebody and then you don't tell the courts that that person is in jail, Scott DaCosta and Leslie Snell, their names and literally Leslie Snell's little rubber stamp as a notary are all over all of my paperwork. All of that paperwork, all of these dismissals that I've been showing over and over again, that I was in prison over, those dismissals very specifically with Scott DaCosta for trying to turn him in, William Barr for trying to turn him in, and registered Nebraska sex offender Robert Franklin Warnick for trying to turn him in. Now, what good is sending the police evidence to themselves if they make sure that all the links are broken? I didn't break the links on the police sites. Also, in every one of the Natalie Bollinger things, if you look right here, a deputy actually verified that. This deputy, instead of just running around telling people that I was schizophrenic and delusional and not to listen to me, that I'm mentally ill, don't listen to me, or that, yeah, I've got problems. You know, I don't want to have to post up stuff written by, well, like, for example, Mona. Now, this is a photocopy, and obviously it's torn up. Well, that's actually the actual video of that situation is on my YouTube channel. Or it's in the phone on the situation where it happened, and I was trying to keep Mona safe. Now, I'm fairly certain that it's on my channel because I was talking to her. I was on a walk when I spoke with her, and he came out of the alley and started screaming you're a rapist, you're a murderer, you're a this, you're a that, you're a... over and over again. And of course, with the sheriff's department and what they did for the 14 days that I was in jail for improper use of 911 for trying to turn in assaults, threats against my life, and the fact that these people have been busted on camera. They've been busted in audio devices. They've also been busted on their own paperwork that if anybody looks at it, it's not that difficult to figure it out. As you all know, he started this on September 21st of 2023. Very specifically using Natalie Bollinger as his excuse, claiming I killed a little girl in Colorado, and later on elaborating. Is that kind of behavior okay? Is it okay to do that to an innocent man? Is it okay to double down after you realize how wrong you were? Is it okay to double down because you got busted? This is what these people are angry about. They're not angry that they were recorded. They're angry that they were recorded breaking the law. Now, with Brian Wilgus, I hope he starts recording everywhere he goes. I hope that these people, like, for example, Mike, Brian Wilgus, I hope that they start recording, because the thing is that we've got recordings of Andrew Wolnez repeatedly breaking the protection order. We've got the instructions that he's supposed to follow. We've got multiple pieces of paper showing that he was given that stuff. You see the Jana Proc thing at the bottom? Yeah, on my paperwork in Nebraska, that would have said Leslie Snell. And instead of Joshua Brown, it would have said Scott DaCosta. And instead of my predators getting served, I'd be being served by my predators. Except that they didn't do so. Isn't that messed up? Isn't it messed up that Scott DaCosta, knowing that I was being illegally held in prison on bogus misdemeanor charges based on word of mouth, not evidence. Yeah, that's called hearsay. Every single one of their cases was based on hearsay. Same thing as here. It's based on hearsay. It's based on lies. It's based on people who decided, you know what? I'm going to go spreading lies about an innocent man because I did something wrong and I got busted, and I think it's okay to do that. Natalie Bollinger didn't like getting busted. Tim Beeson didn't like getting busted. Ted Bollinger didn't like getting busted. Thank goodness I saved the evidence, saved as much as I could, fought as hard as I could. But the fact is, without the people who are witnesses to this going in with me, it doesn't work. Many of these people are afraid to go in. And in many of those situations, I have to be afraid to go in because even after the protection order, the police and the sheriff's department here in Tillamook County continued to look the other way to every single violation. They continue to pretend that the harassment over the Natalie Bollinger stuff and the coordination between those people on the internet and Andrew Wolnez is some delusion that I made up in my head. I've gotten to show a whole bunch of pieces of paper over and over again, and even some little parts where I show just a whole collection of how much there is. But of course, if you're in jail, so you are illegally prevented from testifying in court, you're illegally prevented from going to court, and the police officer who arrested you intentionally leaves that out of court, and the judge who knows that you're in prison is aware that you're not going to be able to go to court, that you're being prevented from going to court. I didn't even get to talk to my public pretender for almost 30 days. He also lied to me and was not interested in actually doing his job. He was just as invested in the mentally ill thing as Scott DaCosta because he knew he was going to get paid and he didn't have to work. And over again, I was prevented from going to those court dates as well. Over and over and over again. How am I supposed to defend myself? You know, we've got these pieces of paper that talk about, oh, this stuff right here, self-advocacy. How are we supposed to do that when we're locked up, prevented from going, prevented from having access to our evidence or showing evidence? And of course, our evidence goes into the hands of the very police officers we're trying to turn in. How is this supposed to work again? When I call the state patrol over and over again and tell them, hey, there is an issue with the local police. I cannot turn crimes into them safely. You're not understanding what safely means. Now, there's a situation supposed to be happening here shortly. Brian Wilgus just messaged me, I believe. Sorry, phone died. I'm on my way, he typed. But what does the self-advocacy stuff say? It says, what happened? How did you feel? Especially about not being heard. Yeah, no joke. That's where it starts. That's how it starts. when these people are acting inappropriately, and I am reacting to that abuse. It is not okay to treat me like I'm a horrible person. When you send me to broken links on the internet, and you send me to landlines to send evidence to, or you refuse to give me a way to send this stuff to you want to make it a situation where I have to do a whole bunch of work. If somebody threatens to kill me on my phone, I can take a screenshot and forward it to you immediately. If you want me to put it on the internet, I have to buy a bunch of stuff and find some internet and find a place to plug all this stuff in and do a bunch of complicated shit. And depending on how full my phone is, my phone might not be capable. I will probably have to use this old ass rickety computer that is, I literally had to spend the money to buy it after Natalie died so I could gather the evidence to show what was going on. In Natalie's case, I was prevented from going by lack of money and lack of information. My friends wanted to give me advice. Kayla Trujillo primarily. I didn't need advice. I needed help turning these people in. I needed help stopping the assaults. So it says, what do you wish had been different? Can you describe a time when you didn't feel your concerns were listened to? If I'm having to go to drug addicts or schizophrenics or police officers, yeah, my concerns are not being listened to. And how about mental health professionals? More than likely not being listened to. More than likely, if a police officer tells them something and I don't have the ability to show them immediately, they'll just believe what the cop said and not look it up. What happens when you try to turn in Scott DaCosta to Scott DaCosta? After going to the state troopers and state patrols, where they all say that it's not their jobs and send you around in circles to the other state patrol offices, or tell you it's not their job to police the police, tell you that you have to go to the Dual County Sheriff's Department to turn in the Dual County Sheriff and his deputies. And I speak very clearly that I'm afraid of being falsely arrested, false charges, and them calling me mentally ill to deny me my rights, preventing me from having access to show my evidence, having me go to a state doctor who's not even going to look it up. Well, thank goodness for Deputy Taylor. The state doctors here had to look it up. Deputy Peyton Taylor. When I tried to turn in Lynn Lothman and the safety issues with the police to 911, about the issues with Lynn Lothman and with the assaults, threats, and vandalism against my vehicle. Lynn Lothman showed up to arrest me with his sergeant, who turned off my recording so I couldn't record. They thought for certain that they had it all set up so that I was going to be locked up for a long time as a schizophrenic. The problem is that they can't send me to the state hospital, but it's because if they send me to the state hospital, I'll have access to call people who are witnesses. I'll have access to actual therapists there in person who can actually call those people and have them be a part of the therapy session. I'd also have access to my telephone, which would mean that I would have access during my therapy sessions to show the state doctors the actual threats against my life and my friends and family's lives. And that all of the desperate shit that I was forced to do was under duress and due to coercion. The laws I broke as a matter of necessity, not to try to get vengeance against anyone. Although in August of 2018, after months of that abuse, still taking it, and since the situation in, I believe, May of 2018, where Shannon Alvarado exposed Kara Johnson Miles, who was supposedly an autism advocate. That was actually through Danica. I did go and check. So this is Danica's friend, and turns out she's from Texas. Well, the police were telling people who were watching this stuff live on YouTube. When this first happened, they were watching it live on my Facebook while it was going on. The harder I work to get the technological ability to show the stuff, they're preventing me from showing in court. They're going out of their way to lie. They want you to pretend that I'm schizophrenic and therefore everything that I say must be something that's a delusional whatever. They don't write down what I actually say. They just write down that it's a delusion. Well, what's a delusion? Did I tell you it was Donald Duck that did it? No, I didn't. I didn't blame it on Donald Duck. I didn't blame it on magical unicorns. I didn't blame it on the CIA or evil brainwave rays. The tactics are the same. They want to say, oh, you can't bring up something that happened in another state, or we can't have witnesses from another state, but you'll allow web sleuths who are coordinating with others to destroy evidence, to slander my name, and to coordinate with others to physically harm me. You'll allow those people to put all sorts of slander, all sorts of libel. You don't care that it's true or false. That's not what matters here. That's not what a court of law is for. A court of law is so that officers have somebody to fucking beat on and get away with. A court of law exists, in my experience, to destroy the lives of innocent people. The court of law is designed to take advantage of poor people, people with no money, people who are alone. I just described homeless people. And then one of the things that they use to try to claim that you're crazy is your looks. Oh, looks don't matter. Looks don't matter. No, they absolutely do. This is the United States of America. You are absolutely judged by a therapist based on your looks. When you judge a therapist based on their looks, or they're not taking into account the environment that you've been forced into, well, that's a really, really tough situation to be in. When Scott Costa gets to assault you for trying to turn him in the way that you're told to turn him in, and state troopers are supposed to come for your safety because you're afraid of Scott DaCosta, and Scott DaCosta shows up and assaults you with a state trooper while another state trooper takes your phone. They're supposed to be on the phone with a witness. They walk as far away as they can. I can even tell you which troopers it was. The reason for that is because I can go back and find the recording and find the paper evidence that I've had to save and carry with me everywhere that I go. I can show that in all of these situations, they didn't follow the protocol with that evidence. Nobody even tried. My public pretenders wanted to go right along with the delusional crazy thing until that piece of paper from Deputy Taylor that I've shown time and again. Now on the front of this, the front cover is the stipulations for the protection order. And of course, we've got stuff going back all the way to 2022 just in this stack. In Nebraska, from people stating very clearly that I am not schizophrenic or delusional. If you say that you were assaulted by a police officer, and the police officer says that's a lie, and the mental health professional is just going to believe the officer, and you have no access to prove that you're the one telling the truth because you were forced to turn in Scott DaCosta and his deputies to Scott DaCosta and his deputies, that's an issue. When you're forced to turn in Ray Rao and his deputies to Ray Rao and his deputies, or Nick Troxel and his deputies to Nick Troxel and his deputies, or Joshua Brown to Joshua Brown. How well do you think that's going to work? How about even if the court grants me a protection order? Because the difference here between Andrew Wolnez and the shit in Colorado is that here I had somebody who took it seriously. I didn't have to walk into Scott DaCosta's office alone. No, I absolutely did in Chapel, Nebraska, over and over again. Or go in with people who are A, uninformed, like Molly, but what she knew she could have come forward about. And of course, there was also B, there's Laura Nelson, who just sat there the whole time, didn't say anything. Anything that she confirmed with a nod because she's a coward. So you get to hear me and Deputy Holloway in that. You don't get to hear Laura Nelson hardly at all, except a few guttural noises. A little bit at the very beginning. At least she went in with me. But she also wanted to use the excuse that she was afraid for her son. And Deputy Holloway should have, at that point, taken her to the side and taken it seriously. He didn't. At that point, it becomes a situation where you're looking at child abuse. If these people are threatening to kill your friends and your family, and they're literally threatening to kill children, as Andrew Wolnez has done, as Dalton Crawford has done. When you want to pretend that I was threatening to harm people, no, people actually were threatening to kill my friends and family, and they still do. But because I'm having to rely on mentally ill people and drug addicts at peer support, or, of course, mandated reporters who pawn me off on drug addicts who are obviously still on drugs. The situation with Ryan Woods, I got to show you guys the messages he sent me. One of them before he went and trashed the Nazarene church. Holy shit, are you fucking kidding me? No, that's not the right thing to do. But he was fucking whacked out of his friggin' gourd. So there's homeless people that wanted to do the right thing because it was the right thing to do. They wrote handwritten notes. There's also people at the Safeway that made handwritten notes. Unlike Candy or Candace, who worked at the deli and was the person that all these folks kept on trying to pawn me off of, video after video in the Safeway. You can hear the Safeway staff. Well, I thought Candy was helping you with that. Well, Candy's always sick. Or Candy's always stuck in the mountains with no service. Or Candy is sick again, or Candy had some emergency that came up, or Candy has decided that she's going to volunteer to do something that I don't need done. Some of these things, like when she decided to set up the appointment to go see Micah, well, she wasn't prepared for that. She had decided with her mom that that's what she was going to do. And I wasn't okay with it. I was not okay with it. What I was okay with is her finding out what's going on so that we don't just get talked over. Her actually looking at evidence instead of telling me that she believes me. And what is it that Brian Wilgus is doing? He's looking at evidence instead of just over and over and over again telling me he believes me. Yesterday off camera, but on recording, I sat down and I spoke with him and I tried to yeah? Come on in. I was just bitching to my YouTube about how well you listened yesterday, that you did an excellent job when we were off camera, and that it was an excellent educational experience, and that you listened extremely well. Obviously, that's the same recording where we have those. I said, obviously, that's the same recording where yesterday when I was showing you this, playing the recordings with those two ladies.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. I was having to go through some stuff over there. And down there, I was like, all right, if he dropped his wallet in here, I'm going to be pissed. But my back was killing me. Did you find it? Okay. So I was.
I haven't found my wallet, no. My phone died. Who would thought you had to charge them?
Who knew?
Well, I haven't charged it since I got it.
Well, I have some chargers in here if you brought it with you.
No, I left it home charging. I panicked real quick and was like, oh, I'll be right there, and walked out the door.
Well, I was talking about how inappropriate it was. Again, you've already spoken your part about that, but you know, with that lady at the Seventh-day Adventist, Nicole, pawning me off on you, and of course having to turn in police officers to themselves.
It doesn't work.
Yeah, it doesn't work. It's resulted in me being falsely arrested and them trying to pretend I'm schizophrenic, and that's the stuff they're wanting to let into court. My own public pretenders aren't fighting for any of this evidence to go into court. I told them that it wasn't a self-defense thing. I mean, it was a self-defense thing, but it wasn't a situation where I sprayed in self-defense. It was a situation where I had the bear spray in this hand and the phone in this hand, and I was pointing the phone, recording it. I was hoping he wasn't going to come up to me. I was hoping he wasn't going to swing it at me, and he stopped right in front of me, swung it up like this, and then across my head. And in the camera, you only see it coming up towards my head, like coming up straight. And when that happens, I've got the camera in this hand and the bear spray in this hand, and the camera goes this way and points towards the senior center, and the bear spray goes this way, and I squeeze both of them like, you know, something's coming at my head. So of course the bear spray goes off. Shit. Of course the bear spray goes off, and I'm supposed to, because of other people that are in the video that are afraid for their safety and afraid of being targeted and so on and so forth, and some of the things they might have done weren't probably the best way to respond when a friend is being harmed. So I gotta try to push those into court. That's some stuff I want to show you too, but it probably wouldn't be today. We got too much like super recent. Rain. So when it's raining out, that makes it so that I have to speak louder. Obviously, the people listening to my channel can probably barely hear me if there's anybody watching at all. But this is also so that later on, when I'm speaking my intentions about what I'm doing, my YouTube is and my Facebook were all the same thing. I'm trying to turn this stuff in. And then the way they play it in court completely ignores all of that. They have court dates without me. They intentionally leave out the fact that all of the parties involved knew that I was in jail because they were all involved in putting me in jail. So I couldn't go to a civil court by one of those people. For example, Leslie Snell, who was working for the Door County Sheriff's Department when I had to turn in Scott DeCosta, I was sent to her. She's the one that picks up the phone. And when I had to try to turn it into her the first time, she wanted to tell me about what a great guy he was and he'd never do anything wrong and so on and so forth. Then she found out that she was on my YouTube channel and she threw a tantrum and wanted to sue the shit out of me. Well, that doesn't work. Those are her words. Her words came out of her mouth. The way that she treated me when I was doing what the state troopers told me to do, you have to turn it into Scott DeCosta. Yeah, they did the same thing here. I've got over 100 phone calls between the state troopers here and the local police department because I'd call the local police department. They'd tell me we can't investigate ourselves and you got to call the state police. The state police tell me, well, we don't police the police. You have to turn it into the agency it happened in. And I'm like, I did that already. Well, the agency that it happened in, starting when I first got here, was the Tillamook Police Department. So I was sent to Victims Advocacy Agency over that and the DA's office over that. And they told me that they couldn't do anything because the police hadn't made a report about it. Yeah. They did the same thing when Natalie's dad was getting a hold of me on her sister's account at my grandma's funeral. Like, I had to miss out on going to see the court date with Joseph Michael Lopez and turning in police in Natalie's case and showing that they coordinated with police agencies across multiple jurisdictions to prevent me from actually showing the evidence they were claiming they wanted. Also, it's also evidence that they had already seen. Like, I literally took my computer there. It was unlocked so that they didn't have to do anything. It was opened up in front of them, and I read to them, and Detective Peterson read all of the stuff from Tim Beeson, starting from when he first started harassing me on his account, instead of just making fake accounts or calling me on the phone at fucking 2:30 in the morning. So I was also showing that 5 or 6 times that homeless people were brazen enough to jump right through that criminal code, kind of like the police have their blue line or thin blue line. It's the same bullshit, no matter which group it's coming from. A lot of these people want to come forward, but they don't want it to affect their ability to get their drugs, which fucking sucks. So, I figured I'd make this and talk about the situation with Andrew Wolnez, going back to the beginning, and of course, pulling out the protection orders and the instructions with the protection orders, but mostly I was talking about the number of people involved and the police using the same tactics, gaslighting, running around telling people I'm schizophrenic and delusional, trying to say that to the courts, going out of their way to pretend that any and all documentation that proves otherwise doesn't actually exist. That must be a schizophrenic delusion. Like Craig McCarty, that's the name of the doctor in Haxton, Colorado, right there. And that was from 10, no, that's my birthday. Let me see, it says 1/16/2018. So that was while he was at Candace Bondurant. After Natalie, they knew that she was killed. It was also after the assault by Officer Whale in Lolatai. And This is all the crap. Oh, you can see the hospital name there. Haxton Hospital District, 235 West Fletcher Street, Haxton, Colorado, 80731. You can also see here the lumbar spine. It's got the T11 and L4 and L5 degenerative disc disease. It does say no acute osseous abnormality, um, but it has the anterior wedging. That's what it's called. Now, I keep saying to these people, minimal, minimal, minimal. And I keep getting told that doesn't matter. What matters is where it's at and the level of it. And with the T11 and T12 and the L4 and L5, T11 and T12 is your thoracic, and L4 and L5 is the lumbar. So degenerative disc disease in those places isn't exactly fun, and it does affect your nerve endings elsewhere. With Deputy Weber trying to yank me out of a wheelchair by my neck, I now have neck issues, and I obviously the safety issues at the hospital with police officers and sheriff's employees going in there and lying to the people in the hospital. You know, it's not safe for me to go back. There's multiple people there who have severe attitudes, and I have paperwork in here that actually shows in crayon that I wrote their names down. Yeah, I wrote down the names as best as I could remember them. When it came to Mary Lindsay, the deputies kept on playing stupid. They didn't know her name. They weren't sure how to get her name, and so on and so forth. And this is another common tactic. If they can prevent you from even knowing the officer who harmed you or the other people involved's names, people who you have every right to their names, then you can't turn them in. And this is things that Lacey Hawkins has not only been privy to, she's been witness to at TFCC. She spoke to me about it. They left all of her stuff out of the paperwork. Now, this right here is what Candace and her mom wanted to do. Not all of this stuff. This is all stuff that I just put in there. But this is what she wanted to do, so this is what we got. Contact information for Adult Protective Services in Tillamook County. Like I said, Kylie Petrie, BS. Where does Kylie Petrie work?
Adult Family Services.
At where?
Adult Family Services? DHS?
No.
No?
She works at TFCC.
Oh.
She works at Tillamook Family Counseling Center. And like I've been saying, that's absolutely the truth of it. And they got so many phone numbers on here, and I called phone number after phone number after phone number. It's not that Candace was trying to be a jerk. She was trying to give the right information. She got the right printout, but she didn't look at any of the information. She didn't look at any of the actual evidence. She went in there with the belief instead of the knowledge. She had knowledge of multiple instances with Andrew Wolnez. Matter of fact, she's even written down on documents with Andrew Wolnez. But the thing is that Candy never, ever, ever made an effort to turn in this abuse with me. The actual crimes, civil court, her idea of doing this civil court, that's a good idea. Absolutely. Hopefully if we do this civil court and we get it so there's a protection order against him, then we can get him to leave me alone well enough for me to turn in the actual assaults that judges had already refused to look at. They granted my permanent protection order, didn't want to look at the evidence, and refused to allow me to show the evidence. In Natalie's situation, I was prevented from being able to even go to court. The cops didn't give me the right information. Obviously, Natalie wasn't giving me the right information. And I was being sent to Jeff Ritter and Kara Heller for the legal information. And they told me that the government's closed down and they couldn't do anything until after the first of the year. Well, what am I supposed to do? And apparently I had a court date on the 22nd of December that I didn't go to because I didn't know it existed. When I was told it was a protection order, I didn't know how any of that shit worked. I knew what people had explained to me half-assedly. Mostly what they told me is to go to friends and family and document everything. Record everything. Now it says Kylie Petrie. So when people wanted to ask me if I've called these places, yes, I have. I've been calling them for years. Now this paperwork also has the date that they printed it out. But Candy, when it actually came to the paperwork in court, she didn't write her name down. She wrote down her relationship to me as a random person. And Wolnez continued his stuff, and none of the Safeway staff were taking it seriously. I'd been told for like 3 or 4 months straight, I'm going into Safeway every day and basically hiding in Safeway because Safeway staff were telling me to. I'm plugging into the wall there because Safeway staff were telling me to. Obviously, I can't just walk all day, every day. My back is killing me. I'm not capable of doing that. I try to go without a cane sometimes, but now I'm at the point where I can't. And I'm told I should have gone the other way. I should have this. I should have that. By people who pretend that I'm schizophrenic and delusional, and so are my disabilities. None of this is stuff that I wanted to post up publicly. None of this stuff is stuff that I wanted to expose. The situation with Natalie's dad and the cruelty from him, that's not something that I wanted to take her words from an email that was over a year old, year and a half old by that point, and post it up as evidence that I was telling the truth. Hey, me and her were friends. She's a drug addict. All the rest of that shit is bullshit. I left. That should have been the end of it. It wasn't. Now, as far as Kylie Petrie goes, the lady at the, does it say Adult Protective Services?
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's Kylie Petrie. And of course, that was printed out on 11/9/2023. Like I said, they give me stuff about housing and programs where I have to move somewhere else and start over from scratch and hope that no motherfucker recognizes me from A&E or their favorite true crime thing and pulls this bullshit there. So yeah, when people ask me if I've called these people, I've got 10 years of people asking me if I've called places that I've had to call alone, and they've committed crimes when I tried to turn it in alone. Kylie Petrie, this is evidence going all the way back to, let me see, 2023. So they were aware. And they continued in my paperwork, like the thing with Mary Lindsay, who I wrote about in crayon. I also made sure that there was some copies, like here, of some of the stuff that I have to turn in. This is a view of the street out there. There's Safeway. There's Mossum's. That's Greg's. Well, it used to be Mossum's. Now it's Greg's. There's the nice lady and her husband who gave me Thanksgiving dinner, and also got to see them youngins that are vandalizing my vehicle, throwing stuff at it. And I'll give you their names too. I'll write them down for you.
I'm in there.
All right, good. Yeah, they're super nice to me. But the other thing is this rumor crap. Obviously, people don't want to be associated with rumors like that. They also don't understand that turnabout is fair play. Like, if you want to pretend that I'm a pedophile and use it as an excuse to assault me, well, I'm not going to assault you back, but I'll certainly call you names back if somebody tells me that you're a pedophile. I'll do it the same exact way. Normally, I would ask for evidence, but if it's an emergency, well, I have to do desperate stuff. And that's how a lot of these folks have manipulated me into doing things that are against my best interest, or me into helping them in a situation where they didn't actually need help, they just didn't want to do it themselves. That's completely different from people not being able to. Like when I have to carry stuff, obviously that box right there, there's no way in hell that I could carry that box to a vehicle. That's why I have that little dolly thing out in the back, but even that's difficult. So, um, sorry, I had to pull out the protection order last night to show it, and now I'm having problems finding it again. Um, these I got to make copies of so I can send them to all the places they tell me to send them to, but obviously running around all these different places, going to 5 or 6 appointments per week when I first got here to different places that all of them wanted to push housing. Like if you notice, this is from TFCC, and it's all on housing. All they sent me from their end of it was on independent living housing, but no follow through. Meanwhile, I'm supposed to be getting a hold of them for obviously adult protective services, Kylie Petrie. Obviously, that's a year. Well, let me see. That was a year after this. This is from 11/19/2022, and the stuff for Kylie Petrie is from. Let me see. Did I lose it again already? The stuff from Kylie Petrie is from. Uh, Sorry about that. 11/9. So like 10 days short of a year. So it had already been a full year since I'd been to Tillamook Adventist Hospital and gotten this paperwork. It'd been a full year that I'd been trying to turn this in. It'd been a full year since I'd been speaking out about TFCC running me around in circles and how they treated me horribly when I went in. I mean, they're not doing what they're supposed to for disabled people. When you were saying, well, that's not their job, when you were talking about the housing, well, when they're saying that they're supposed to be advocates and the government is paying them to be advocates for disabled people, they have to advocate for something. So either they're advocating for a drug addict or they're advocating for housing. They're not advocating for a victim. They're not advocating for a disabled victim. None of these mental health places will do that. That is not their job. Their job is to have you come back once a month for therapy so that they can get paid. Their job is to try to get you to say that you're on drugs or tell you that you have to be on drugs to get any of these services. So then you have to select a drug that you think you can handle. Like for me, okay, I can handle pot. They do sort of consider that a drug, but it's also legal. So I get that thrown in my face. Pot's not a drug, pot's legal. So I was gonna see if you were able to make a report about the situation with the violation of the protection order.
I made a video.
Yeah, badass.
It's on my phone. Yeah, I did.
Well, it's not here now, but at least it's something. Hopefully, we can get that working. If it's too big, it might not send it. That's an issue that I had, mostly because everything was full. It's not going to send a long video, and if the other person's phone is mostly full, they're not going to be able to receive a large video. No, I don't like the look of your shins.
Neither do I.
Well, I can't see them right now. I was gonna. Oh, did you? The other copy that I had, did you take of the stipulations, like where he's not allowed to be in view or voice or any of that?
Mm-hmm. I took pictures of it.
All right. I knew you'd done that. I wasn't sure if you'd taken that paper with you because I did eventually find 2 copies, and I wanted
You
to.
gave me a copy.
Yep. Do you have it on you?
Mm-mm. No, it's on my coffee table.
Hmm. All right. Well, it's raining out and it sucks. I'm getting ready to end the video. I am not, as far as I'm aware, recording on the audio device. However, if I was to give you some money for uh, just to get like some cheap snack food, do you think you could run home and get the phone and get that piece of paper?
Yeah, try it.
All right. Um, I've been looking for that, and I know I have another copy. It's just this video's an hour and 31 minutes long, and I've been looking for that since the moment I opened it up. I also am hurting a bit, so I haven't moved much from this spot. Um, I think that should be enough. What do you think?
Snacks.
Yeah, just basically anything that's good for someone who's hypoglycemic.
Fruit.
Oh my god, I love fruit. Bananas, oranges, those little mandarin thingies that you can peel right off and it falls off. Smarties or whatever.
Yeah.
Smarties for dummies. Thank you, Brian.
Yeah.
Another thing we went over last night with Brian, the fact that I did have a mental breakdown, and it's the aftermath is kind of like having a seizure. I mean, you're kind of out of it. Um, you're tired, but not tired. You're exhausted, but mm, this is all stuff that I've tried to show in person. I've tried to go in person by myself over and over again without a friend or family member. If a friend or family member did go in with me, they either didn't say a goddamn thing or they just weren't informed of what was going on like they should have been, like a friend would have been. And that's where you find out when it's actual friends or if they're fair weather friends. People who are only there when it benefits them, when it's an attribute for their party life. A lot of people tend to think that their drugs are the most important thing in life, and any friendship based on drugs is worthwhile. I've known a few folks like that. I've also seen a lot of those friendships completely melt down. I'm gonna turn off this video and go back through this stuff. I know I've posted it up on here before and I've read it before, and I know that it's the screen cover for this, but it's also in one of the short type of things, I think. I'll have to go back through and check. You see how long it takes to try to find something in that big old pile while I'm talking? Imagine if you're asking a bunch of questions and using a shitty tone with me while that's going on. Or insinuating that you don't need to see the evidence. Or outright stating that you don't need to see the evidence. Multiple times I was arrested by officers who, specifically, it was supposed to be meeting with me to turn in the officers who were involved in committing the crimes. Only for it to turn out that the officer who committed the crimes, like Amanda Jonas, was the investigator that they gave me so that she could investigate herself. And the paperwork shows it. Also, the fact that they worked together with the Bollingers and their cronies, including a woman who they already knew to be a fraud, that makes it just much more worse. Thing is, it's not that they didn't know what was going on, it's that they pretended not to know what was going on. They used hearsay and slander to excuse the crimes they committed. I've also got the names of several people that, well, Timothy Sadler decided to ask them if they wanted to be victims. On the second occasion when Mawson came at me with a fucking pipe. They tried to pretend that I chased Mawson down the street with this thing and sprayed him 5 or 6 times for no reason. Oh yeah, that was Scott Brown. That was his testimony. And that is certainly not what the actual evidence shows. There's also Timothy Sadler, who lied throughout the entire thing, and I have to get my public pretenders who were never trying to actually help me to begin with, who did the most minimalistic job that they could based on the tiny bit of actual civilian help that I had. You get to see time and again the police officers who I'm trying to turn in want to use the other people in the community that I'm trying to turn in as kind of a little shield or as an excuse. They use them to harm me because they know if they ignore the harm against me, these people will drive me fucking nuts. And if they continue to send me to places that don't give a shit and places that are run by literally drug addicts for peer support, that it's going to go absolutely nowhere. All of these cases, every single one of them, has hinged on people believing what they're told instead of looking it up. You can look up Natalie Bollinger and you can see a whole bunch of Natalie Bollinger sites that none of them get the story right, none of them tell the truth, and none of them care. That's why I post the evidence up on my YouTube channel. It's also why I'm very loud. Well, these people pretended that I threatened to kill their friends and family before and after Natalie died. You get to see that their death threats didn't start immediately after Natalie's death. They started before. When Natalie disappeared, people were threatening to kill me and my friends and family. People who are directly connected to the Bollinger family. Both Natalie's mother's side and her father's side. The people who physically assaulted me were friends with people like Rose M. Kelly. Derek Apodaca assaulted me for crimes that literally were never committed, and he's friends with Rose M. Kelly. He physically assaulted me at the park over on Arapahoe where the band shell is. Well, used to be. I heard it burnt down. That's also where I got my phone slapped out of my hand by a dude who looks like Joey Moreno. Like him. I don't think it was actually him. But the dude knocked my phone out of my hand because I was recording him threatening me in Boulder. His claim is that he didn't want to be recorded. Just like Andrew Wolnez claiming he doesn't want to be recorded. Well, I don't care if you want to be recorded or not. You fucking threatened to kill me. You're accusing me of fucking molesting little kids and taking pictures of kids in the bathroom and killing a little girl in Colorado. You're saying an awful lot real fucking quick and getting in my face and preventing me from going where the Safeway staff told me to go if there's an issue. Obviously, the Safeway staff were not going to kick him off the property. They were going to let him stand there and do his thing no matter what fucking crimes he was committed. The Safeway staff were just going to turn their head the other way. At that point, I'm like, all right, well, he's going to have to go in after he's turned in his cans. And he's going to have to come out. So I'm going to leave. Instead of going into Safeway for my safety, because the Safeway employees, after all of that bullshit, have come inside of the Safeway, and we're not going to let that shit happen. They just, not going to have any fighting out here. Okay. I wasn't interested in fighting. And he assaulted me in that very same video. That was September 21st of 2023. What assaults and abuse was I trying to turn in to Kylie Petrie on November 9th of 2023? Someone calling themselves Steph Van Steen typed, what's this all about? Safeway recycling? Pardon my spelling. No, it's actually about nationwide abuse here in the good old US of A. It's about all the drug addicts that hang out at the can machines. And if they don't like you, will spread rumors and scream it and assault you and all sorts of other stuff. It was about the fact that I was basically living in Safeway for 6 months. Well, maybe not 6 months, probably 3 or 4 months. Basically living in Safeway. Because at least in Safeway, these people didn't have access to me. And this is what the Safeway staff wanted me to do. Temporarily, until we get somebody to turn it in with me. While Candy didn't help to turn it in. She finally actually made the attempt to make the protection order with me. And that was absolutely useful. I have the permanent protection order against Andrew Wolnez now. But he keeps on violating it over and over and over again. And he's got a history of drug use, a really, really long history of drug use. He's got a lot of people in town who know his history of drug use. A lot of people that I'm sent to for help have done drugs with him for years, like John Stevens. It's not my fault that John Stevens, after witnessing Andrew Wolnez kicking the crap out of my vehicle, it's not my fault that John Stevens walked up to my vehicle and was talking to me about it. It's not my fault that he was talking about how he had to listen to Andrew Wolnez for 30 minutes just to get measured out 2 minutes worth of shit. So when I made the mistake of saying fentanyl, I do apologize. I absolutely apologize. I do know that shit is the slang term for methamphetamines. I'm not a moron. Grew up in the system. My parents were both drug addicts. Then I'm stuck out on the streets with a bunch of drug addicts because I'm different. People don't like you when you got Tourette syndrome and when you got autism. They just assume you're on drugs. And that's where me posting up evidence on my YouTube channel over and over and over again, I'm going to keep on doing that. I'm going to keep on showing the actual evidence that these Natalie Bollinger sites want to pretend doesn't exist. The stuff the police want to pretend is some sort of schizophrenic delusion. The fact that they spent so much American taxpayer dollars to try to cover up that they made mistakes. It's actually pretty cool that I have this much evidence. It's actually pretty cool that I was able to save this much evidence, and that's why the evidence is more important than my entire life. Chris Stafford used Natalie Bollinger as his excuse to stalk me. Chris Stafford used Natalie Bollinger as his excuse to stalk me and to threaten my life and to tell other people that he was going to harm me, trying to convince other people to harm me for him. And we've got the messages from Amanda that prove that. We've also got the recordings with Amanda and her mom about those guns. God bless America, right? We've also got recordings from multiple witnesses telling me that Andrew Wolnez is threatening and harassing them. Third-party contact. The same thing that he was doing way, way, way back in when? 2023. We've also gotten to hear from several people on this channel how they have protection orders against people. The court's granted the protection order, but the police won't do anything. The police do not care. If you're poor, you don't matter. Anyway, I'm going to end this. Like I said, I'm not in the best way mentally. I'm pretty blah. I don't know how long that's going to last. But Brian hopefully will come back in a timely and efficient manner with food and that piece of paper and possibly even his telephone. Good to be rid of you. Thanks for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Remember, you are your brother's keeper and no victim left behind.